it's the Really Charlie Podcast. Yeah, it's the Really Charlie Podcast. Yo, it's the Really Charlie Podcast. Bumping through your broadcast, grab a chair, fill your glass. Yeah, it's the Really Charlie Podcast. Yo, it's the Really Charlie Podcast. Yeah, it's the Really Charlie Podcast. Bumping through your broadcast, grab a chair, fill your glass.
To the Really Charlie Podcast. I'm your host, Charlie Perry, along with the host there, Marvin, Speller-CoachM100. How you doing, man?
I'm pretty good, my brother. How about you?
I'm doing all right, and I just can't wait to present to everyone this podcast, as we're here every week, bi-weekly, and it's real important that we bring mental health to the table and make mental health a priority. So, but without any further ado, I'm going to put this video on, right now, and we can just go to this young lady's testimony. And this video is provided to us by the 700 Club on their YouTube channel. Okay. All right, let's go here.
Things like you should kill yourself, and I would hear a lot of whispers like.
For years, Alexis Hoffman says she was tormented by voices. It had started in 2009. She was a freshman in high school and had just come out of a physically, sexually, and mentally abusive relationship. She became angry and was filled with guilt and shame.
My heart became callous after the abusive relationship because I felt like I could just never get right with God. Like I felt like I was too far gone. Like I had messed up too much.
Having pushed her Christian upbringing aside, Alexis would spend the rest of her high school years filled with drinking, drugs, sex, and cutting. By now, her parents, Ted and Robin, had realized the life their daughter was living.
When the only thing that your daughter ever gave you was joy, and then you find out that she's doing drugs, sex, alcohol, breaks your heart.
By her senior year, she was being tormented by nightmares. Then came the voices.
They tell me I'm useless and ugly, that I'm worthless and dirty. They tell me to just die, and I believe them. I remember having this obsession with stabbing. I would sneak out into the kitchen and I would start taking one knife at a time and bringing it into my room.
One day, her mom found a stash of knives and suicide notes. Immediately, she took her daughter to the ER and Alexis was admitted to a psychiatric hospital.
I am just talking to God and saying, Lord, you said, and your word says that she is yours and you will not let anything happen to her. And I know that your word is true and I believe you.
Over the next 4 years, Alexis would be in and out of 20 different psych wards, diagnosed with bipolar and schizophrenia, among others. Even being heavily medicated didn't quiet the voices or ease her torment.
My life was a living hell, and not only my life, but my family's.
There's no joy, just empty, just not knowing what was going to happen, and me not knowing either how to help her.
When you looked into her eyes, there was an absolute dead stare, always. And she never, ever had that. She always had the most beautiful smile, and her eyes were always sparkling. And it wasn't my little girl.
Now, unable to hold down a job and on disability, Alexis was prone to violent fits of rage. She had no control over her actions, often blacking out.
When Alexis got mad, it was not pretty. It was scary. I had even said to my husband, we should get locks on the bedroom door.
One time, she woke up in a pool of blood after cutting herself 40 times.
And I would be so ashamed, what did I just do? That's not me. Why did I do that? That is not how I act. I don't know why I keep doing this. Who is that?
Exhausted, Alexis told her family she was going to kill herself.
I've got these voices telling me what to do. I'm seeing things, and I said, I'm just tired. I'm so tired. I'm at war with myself, and I can't do it anymore.
Robin and I were preparing ourselves for her to kill herself. And you talk about that's tough when you have to prepare yourself.
The next day, Robin took Alexis to a healing conference where Pastor Todd White was ministering. Alexis went to the altar.
I thought to myself, these meds aren't working. These doctors can't help me. And I said a prayer to God. I said, God, if you're real, then I need you to show up, and I need you to show up in a big way. And if you don't, I'm killing myself tonight.
Then Pastor White prayed for her.
I could see her eyes going crazy. I knew that she had devils. I just looked at her and said, come out. And she fell to the floor screaming.
I remember my mouth just opening so wide, and these screams of horror were coming out. Screams, hissing, growling. I just felt stuff come out of my body, like I could physically feel things leave.
She got free and got delivered, not because of anything except the authority in the name of Jesus.
I felt a peace that I had never felt before. Like, I could hear myself think. I felt restored and I felt new. And the love of God that I felt in that moment was like nothing I've ever felt before.
Alexis rededicated her life to God and asked for forgiveness of her sins.
I was repenting, like, for past things and everything, but I knew in my heart of hearts too that those were cast into the sea of forgetfulness, and I was on this new path with him.
We were up all night just praising God and just the miracle that happened.
If you're wondering if God can heal people with a mental condition, the answer is yes, because he healed my daughter.
Alexis stopped all her psych meds and has been free from mental illness ever since. Today, Alexis is married to Jonah. She's a substitute teacher and loves her new purpose in life, helping others find freedom from mental illness through Jesus Christ.
If there's one thing I can tell you, it would be to cling to hope, and that is Jesus. Keep going to him. Don't get tired or weary of going to him. He's the only solution to your problems.
Get away with a great deal.
All right. That video was provided by the 700 Club in their YouTube channel, and their narrative behind the video, below the video, is an abusive relationship in high school left Alexis with troubling thoughts that eventually developed into severe mental illness. So go ahead, Coach. I'm going to let you take the lead on this.
Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing. And, it's always good to hear different examples of people being from one place and getting to a better place.
Yes.
As we all know, when you think about mental illness, it's very prevailing in these United States and across the whole world. With that, there's people who are trying different methods. I'm always at the point where try different methods. One way may not solve it.
Yes.
I would say the most likely source of treating it is through, I would say, active treatment. When you talk about medication, psychotherapy, and let's take one at a time. Let's go from medication. Medication does have side effects. We all know that, right? All medications have side effects, right? There's also natural medications to treat different types of mental illnesses, right? I would always have that where you talk to your doctor, and your doctor can make sure they can steer you in the right direction. So whatever you try, make sure you talk to your doctor. Just do research, especially if you're advocating for somewhere else. Different types of therapy. Therapy is incredibly important. Here's the thing about therapy. As we've seen through the pandemic, the healthcare workers are stressed, they're overloaded, and a lot of them are probably beyond burnt out in this field. One thing I always say, whether it's a doctor or whether it's a therapist, different types of therapists, it's that connectivity that you have to really seek first, because a lot of times you may not have the right doctor. It may be a great doctor for someone else, but may not be a great doctor for you. I would always make sure that if you have a doctor, and I think I mentioned this last time, you should be able to ask your doctor simple questions, especially if you're advocating for someone, because the doctor can't answer and they really don't want to answer. How do you think they're going to treat the patient? And we've seen this time and time again. Um,
So true.
yeah, so I would always, and then sometimes the life experiences, the people you're around, um, got to have a good support group, especially if you're going through problems. It's always good to sometimes flush out the old to bring in the new. And
So
then, um, how are you eating? How are you resting? Especially if you have a mental condition, you got to get plenty of rest. Plenty of rest. Um, and I've talked to people who are the experts in the field. I've talked to people who've suffered through ailments. That's one of the number one things they say is really making sure you get good rest and your diet. Exercise, vitamin D, your supplements, all those things are critically important. Um, but those are things that can help support and treat your condition. With that, I really want to go in. D, your supplements, all those things are critically important. Um, but those Okay, there we go. Um, and so with that, there's like I read this article once where it's talking about 5 tips to accepting your new diagnosis, and I really wanted to share this today, kind of offload the things I've discovered, and I really think that's the purpose of our call when we get on this together, really to provide something new every time we get together, Charlie, and
Sure.
provide tips. We're not trying to be doctors. We're really not trying to replace anybody, any professionals that you have out there, but it's an opportunity for people to come together and learn. Maybe you learned something, or maybe you can come on here and share something we didn't know, and we can continue to share with the masses. So,
Exactly.
5 tips to accepting your new diagnosis. Um, so, your diagnosis is a part of your story. It's a part of a story. Okay, it's not your whole story. Um, and I'm going to kind of wrap this all up at the end. Number two, there has to be some level of acceptance of this is what it is, just like anything.
Mm-hmm.
Any type of diagnosis from a medical or physical perspective, there has to be a level of acceptance. Number three, decide how you're going to deal with it. It's really important. Sometimes you may have to loop others in to see how you're going to deal with it. You can't just ignore it. It's like the elephant in the room. Number four, um, this experience is yours. Don't let anybody define it for you. This is how you're supposed to be. This is how you're supposed to do. This is what you need to do. This is your
Mm-hmm.
experience. Um, and then number five, not everyone will understand your diagnosis.
So true. We don't have enough. Some people just don't have the empathy for someone that's coming out.
Yeah, most
And,
people.
yeah,
Most people.
most people. Yeah.
A lot of times, if you're not dealing with it face to face, you don't really understand or get it. Sometimes it's different being right there. You can have a lot of empathy, but sometimes experience is the best form of empathy. Um, and I think about the number one point I was talking about. It's a part of your story, but it's not your whole story. Anything that you may have doesn't define you. You get that choice of letting it define you. That's on you. How are you gonna handle it? How are you gonna define it? Sometimes you have to go through a cycle. Sometimes there's anger, there's denial, and then sometimes you have to go through the full cycle, because you can be in denial of what you have, and then once you can go through denial, hurt, pain, the whole 9 yards, that's when you can really start moving forward with it. And a lot of times this requires a support base,
Mm-hmm.
friends, family, etc. So those are the 5 tips of when you get a diagnosis. 5 tips of really accepting it, and that's really, really simple stuff.
Yes, it is. One of our comments is the people you will surround yourself with, including your medical team, resting, eating, stress, take long breaks from social media as more statistics come to light. It's true. Sometimes we have, we rely on social media as the go-to, and sometimes it isn't the go-to. It only amplifies the problem, some problems, whether it's mental illness, or whether it's, just basically anything. It could be a emotional standoff with someone, and social media elevates it, makes it inflamed. So,
Well, we've seen that, especially during the pandemic. A lot of people have drifted more towards social media because what else are you going to do? It's not like they decided to open up society to people. Oh, they've conveniently started doing it again now.
yeah,
But what do people have to gravitate towards besides TV and social media? Because a lot of people are home anyway, right?
yeah,
So thank you for posting that.
yeah.
Sometimes taking breaks from social media, and sometimes social media can have a direct connection to PTSD and other things. Um,
In this
some
case, sorry, Coach, go ahead.
And those are things that can help support and treat your
This
condition.
video keeps coming on. I keep trying to get off of it. Sorry.
The echo.
We use social media right now. We're using it to try to, bring the attention to, mental illness, and it's very useful, in a lot of ways. But it also can be, as this comment is, it says that, let's see, it says, thank you. It can amplify wholeheartedly, which is so true. It amplifies so much, but in this case, we're trying to be as positive as we can.
Yeah, and we're trying to provide a counterbalance towards what it is, right? So, and I think Facebook has its usefulness. Social media has its usefulness. Perhaps there is a uneven balance there, and I think we're trying to swing the balance in another direction.
Yes, sir. Yeah. I just want to read something real quick here.
Yeah. Thank you, Joey, for joining.
Yeah.
Thank you, sweetheart. Thank you, Michael. And Michael, both Michaels. Thank you for being here, and thank you for the comments.
Just wanted to give some credentials on Marvin Speller. This is my family. This is my dude. He does so much for so many people, and some of the things that we kind of take for granted as good people. And I have him by my side. Marvin Speller is a life coach out of Los Angeles, California. He is a professional with professional advice to direct his clients into a healthier direction. This podcast will allow the listeners and viewers to ask the coach questions or explain their concerns with their health. It is hashtag CoachM100, who is also the proud co-owner of hashtag Double Down Cosmetics. This is my man, my ace, my go-to. And just want you all to know a little bit about him if you didn't read the advertisement to the podcast. You're welcome, sir.
Appreciate that.
Let's see. We'll leave that on the bottom line for a little bit. Let's see. Marvin is great, which we all know.
Thank you, Michael. Appreciate that.
And Mrs. Speller says, my husband is a lifesaver. He has helped to heal our domestic violence community as a professional coach. Women are striving because of him, of course.
Thank you, honey. Appreciate that.
He's a book in itself, and I just want to bring that up because I think I should bring it up all the time. It's very, very important. Let's see. Now, I've seen the reason why I selected that video from the 700 Club is because previously on podcast someone had mentioned about faith, and you had mentioned you gotta try to get it, and there's many solutions, and some believe that faith is the solution. So I just wanted to bring that up only because previously we had that comment during our last podcast. So I wanted to bring it up. But it also relates to how common, I think her story was very common to, many, many teenagers that go through different relationships, and adults, and it's sometimes the person closest to you is causing that mental illness. And in this case, it was her boyfriend, ex-boyfriend. And she later ended up finding a soulmate and marrying him. And as you've seen in the video, and what I like also is mom doing probably her routine stuff around the house and came across the letters, the knives, and immediately acted upon it. And so as you're surrounded, your surroundings, or whether it be you or someone else, be aware of your surroundings. Look at the indicators, knives in the drawers, guess what? It's something a little bit, questionable. You got to look at it. And then now when it becomes more than one knife, that's something that's very alarming. So I'm glad that mom, checked it out. Even dad was a little observant with her smile and her stare, and that it was absent. The stare was there and the smile was absent. I'm glad he caught on to that. Your family members, and if you pay attention, those indicators may be right in front of you. And not necessarily, sometimes, people just don't show those indicators also, as we've seen in the past.
Yeah, I'd love to address that too. Oh yeah, Charlie, you're definitely a rock star, my brother. So we appreciate all you do. You do so. No, you don't try. You do so much for many people, and so well loved, brother. So appreciate you, man. And I'd like to stop and say those things as well, man, because really, you're one upstanding dude, man. Really all over. It's kind of one of these things. I think sometimes everything's on the table when it comes to trying to support and help people. I've heard people being hypnotized to get better, right? Do you remember that movie Get Out? He had that addiction. So he had an addiction.
Slips on my mind right now.
Yeah, okay. So this guy named Chris, he had an addiction to cigarettes. And she was a therapist. Well, she was probably a psychologist. I call her like a voodoo psychologist. She's really doing some stuff you probably won't find in a textbook. So she kind of put a spell on him and really had him go to a sunken place. The sunken place really hypnotized him, but hypnotized him in a bad way because she kind of controlled him at that point. But it really allowed him to stop smoking. I've heard many times people have been hypnotized, and when they're hypnotized, they're able to kind of bring out the better part of them and really layer and move closer to their desires. I've heard all sorts of things, man. You were talking about religion and people using that to get better. Like I said, everything's on the table, right? Sometimes when you look at it from that perspective, sometimes people think people are being walked in on, right? And when they're walked in on, they are taken over by demons or whatever you want to call them, right? So I've always been in this mindset. Sometimes you got to lean on certain things to get to a better place. I am not an advocate for Western medication. However, if I need it, I'm going to take it. I'm not going to be addicted to it. I'm not going to stay on it, right? sometimes you have to be mindful of staying into a certain paradigm, right? Because it really gets your focus too narrow. Sometimes to solve a problem, it has to be a little bit broader. And that's why I say, everything should be on the table sometimes when people need help and support. And I think she was an example of that she tried all the other things. She wanted something that helped her out. Now she's leading a thriving life. And sometimes people have tried the religion or they tried other things that didn't work. They went to the medication therapy. So I think the approach in society has to be a little broader. There are other like experimental solutions that they're having for mental illness right now that is being held up by the feds, right?
Uh-huh.
Um, there's one thing I forgot what it's called, but you insert a band over someone's head. It's kind of like a MRI, but it shoots brain waves into that to really start to um, get your brain functioning properly again. So there's so many things that people, and you know what? Here's the thing: if you ask most doctors, they don't really know what it is. They've been told what to do, which is heavily medicate people. But did you know 100 years ago they were drilling holes in people's heads to try to alleviate some of this stuff? So they're
Yeah.
really, in some ways, in the dark ages when it comes to treating mental illness.
I
Mental
mean,
illness.
look how they were executing women, where they thought they were witches,
Yeah,
just
dumping them in the
basically.
water.
Yeah, yeah, you know, and it's amazing how one man's judge or one man or woman's judgment could kind of fatally, kill someone, It's,
Right.
but let's see, let's try to get names with this Facebook users so we can at least check it out, But
Okay.
it says, yeah, this is true. We can look at all forms. For me personally, my ex-church blamed me, accused me of lying. They were supposed to be the people of the cloth, but they did the opposite. What a rabbit hole I went in because of this. My mother saved me from that. And awesome. I'm glad someone was there for you. And it just because you have a title or position doesn't mean that you're the all, to tell all or the know all of certain situations, and but basically an individual has, should be able to evaluate some things, and say, hey, wait a minute, this may not be the advice that I want, and like you said, check it out, investigate it, um, and it may be hard for someone with mental illness to do all this, but with family members, like she mentioned, her mother was going along the ride with her, and and noticed this, so. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah. Great point.
He said it almost cost me my life. That was the
Yep.
second comment.
Yep. Yeah. I think about I was talking to someone this week, and you just made a good point. Really got me thinking, Charlie. You know, it's a lot of times when you're going through something, you really can't. And the main thing I took out of that video was having advocates, right? Because sometimes when you're going through something, you don't have the self awareness where to raise your hand, I need help, or the wherewithal, right?
Uh-huh.
Um, have you ever been like ill and been in a fog? You can't really recognize certain things, right? So I think about that sometimes, and I think about that, and what's relating to me is that when I think about almost 100,000 people on the streets here in LA, and I say to myself, where are the advocates for these people?
Uh-huh.
Because I get it. Sometimes you may want to give up and all. I get that, right? But hopefully you have people that can advocate for you. Look like Michael. How do you know if it's mental? Um,
So,
I would Michael. I would say I would always say for a diagnosis, I think you have to go to a professional on that. Because I think
uh-huh.
sometimes I would say Sometimes they look alike, but I'm not qualified to diagnose someone. I would say get it from a professional, and has to be a doctor. But
Yeah.
with that diagnosis, if you're advocating something or you're advocating for somebody or yourself, and you're competent enough to ask the question, you have to put them through the test. I don't care what your qualifications say. They have to be able to answer because doctors make mistakes all the time, right?
So true.
Now,
So
they're
true.
the only ones that's supposed to be diagnosing people, right? But they make a ton of mistakes. So you have to be able to ask them many, many questions. And maybe next time, Charlie, maybe the next time we'll talk about questions that people can ask um, the professionals, right?
Yes.
I think that's fair, right? I think
Mm-hmm.
questions that you can ask them. And I really want to go, I want to do a little research in that. And I want to ask some people who are professionals as well.
True.
But let's do that next time. Ask
Yep.
questions. Because I really think we've seen this a lot. A lot of times people are misdiagnosed or because doctors are Russian or they may be competent. No, they may have the quality of the education, but they may not have the competency because
Mm-hmm.
maybe they just don't have that level of competency.
True.
So that's kind of what I think would be fair to address because I think I know for a fact my wife and I and I saw what she did helping family members over the years. I heard her rattle off different questions. The doctor should be able to answer that, right? You're supposed to be competent enough. Someone asks you questions, you know how to do it, right?
Yeah.
just like
Yeah.
just like you go to a barber, right? You ask a barber for a simple haircut, and they don't know what that is. What do? You turn around, walk out the door, right?
Mm-hmm.
Almost like the same thing. If you wearing
Yeah.
a badge of honor for something you do, anybody should be able to ask you questions. You're a notary, right? You should know where to drop that stamp, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So it's the same thing, man. And I don't understand why it escapes me why we're we don't do that enough. We're
Mm-hmm.
taught where they're the experts. So, but I'm always told, I've said this and I'll say it again. Don't believe anybody. Ask the questions. Check it out. Do your own research, right? Don't believe anything Charlie and I are saying. Do your own
Mm-hmm.
research.
Exactly. Michael says society's reluctance to create true visibility to this topic has left some behind without any path for a diagnosis and treatment.
Yeah, I want to go back real quick before Michael C had a second part. It's tough
Yep.
because I'm in a community like Charlie and sometimes yeah, it's
I'll put
really
that
hard.
back up.
Yeah, it's really hard going community. Um yeah, and I remember when I went down to Skid Row in January, it really, really affected me. So sometimes it's hard going out here, especially when you're seeing certain things. Um and sometimes before you can really help someone or their diagnosis, sometimes you just got to hold a certain space for them. It could be a space of calmness, it could be a space of care and concern. I've met so many people on the streets where some people would deem they're dangerous or they could do something to people, but I always approach it from a place of love and sincere, genuine care. But I'm also watching my surroundings and being protective and trying to use some of my smarts. But I approach it, and what I try to do really is approach them like they're a human being, not like they have a condition. I think it was number 4. Experience is yours. Don't let anyone define you. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I think about that when I deal with anybody. I try to approach them like they talk about the golden rule. It may seem like it's everybody said that, right? But what does it mean when you apply it, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you're out, and especially when you see somebody that's going through a level of trauma or hurt.
Yeah. The one thing that I just caught on with Michael talking about a path without a path to diagnosis and treatment. and that, that path needs to come from a lot of different places, whether it's home, work, school, and for the most part, a lot of those places have, well, sometimes home doesn't have it, but, with the school and everything and counselors, they try to do the best they can. But I think what they're handcuffed to is a bunch of HIPAA stuff, and privacy and all that.
But with that said, they got to do better. I mean,
yes,
I mean,
exactly.
we're in a mental health crisis, and you know what? You got to do better. You got to replace them, or you got to blow it up. Because I was reading something. We didn't talk about it last time. I was reading something recently, and they were saying that how they treat and how they diagnose mental illnesses, their methods are so archaic and antiquated, and they have to replace them because they have run they've run through their usefulness right now.
Yeah.
So they're ready. So they're ready to take all that stuff and burn it.
Mm-hmm.
So what does that say?
There's been some mistakes. There's a problem.
And you keep using the same thing. Oh, there's mistakes, right? And you're still using the same damn thing over and over again. And you're wondering why. It's growing and not lessening.
Thank you, Michael, for that comment. It really, I second that. I really do.
Yeah. We got a couple more comments here.
Yeah, let's see here.
I've heard some. Yeah. Oh, pay schedule, certain diagnosis. They also how they diagnose people of color is different from how they diagnose Caucasians, right? And I'm like, why?
Yeah.
Why are you doing? Aren't you supposed to be helping people? What's all this back stuff they're doing? And I'm like, no one. And see, this is the things that people need to talk about, right? The accountability, right? And this is what I always said: the accountability is everything because you're not solving the problem. So I'm going to use a stat here. So you got probably damn near 100,000 people here in LA on the streets, right? It's a lot of people, right? I don't care how big a city is. 100,000 people is a lot, right? So when you think about that, you got a population. Let's just use black, right? 10% of the population, right? But 40% of the homeless population. What is that saying, Charlie?
So there's a discrepancy. Definitely.
Oh, there's a huge discrepancy, right?
Yeah.
And so they're really not treating people. Everybody's being caught up in this, and when you think about, they're saying their methods are antiquated and they're about to make more new ones. What are you waiting for? Pandemic just hit.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay. This is sure my mother, psychiatrist, worked for state before she passed. We've since accounted for my background. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. It's really, I don't have any words, really.
Yeah.
I don't have any words.
There's one thing I want to say before, I want to say while Michael Samayo's on there, I'd like to do a collaboration about three of us on the podcast, and where we talk, with all of us. There was something he shared with me, and I think it's something that he was experiencing or had in his head for quite a while. Something bothering him throughout his life, and he definitely had shared that with me, and I'd like to have him share that story eventually. And where he was, between him and his parents, and how he felt as a kid growing up, and then what he felt later on in his adult life, and I'd like to bring that out. And I'm pretty sure Michael's ready for that. So the let's see, Michael Casaccio says, Charlie has done so many great shows, but this is by far the most meaningful for me. I appreciate that, and
it's great.
And it's great to have the coach with me, because this guy has some solutions to help out with a lot of things, so many things, and like I said, he's my go-to. and he's an understanding person. Could you imagine that? You want to talk about something, but you just don't know how to, who to go to and who to speak to. And when you go to Coach M100, as I say, or Marvin, when you go to him, instantly you have the confidence to speak to this man. And I'm very confident that happens with most people that come into his path. So this show is definitely something where when you're listening to him explain different things, and with with the intellect that he has, you're confident that you can speak to him about a lot of things. So, guys like, that put the comments, bring up the comments, and you want to speak to anybody, or you need someone to speak to Coach, feel free, inbox us, we'll do whatever we have to. So
that's what it's about. That's what's
team
about.
effort, man. Team effort. This podcast is a team thing, and I really, really look forward to it every time. And we both have busy schedules, and we're doing a lot of things. But we definitely try to stick to this programming bi-weekly and get things going. So, and I love it.
Yeah, it's important. Very important. And, we'll continue to reach people, and doesn't matter, whatever it takes to go find them. Because may not always come to us, but we can go find them. Continue to have a platform. I think the intent is to offset whatever's going on out here, and this can lead to many things. That's what I think about.
Sure.
What it's all about.
Sure. It'd be a great thing to hear later on that, hey, I listened to your podcast, and it put me in a direction. I became aware of a few things, and I got some help, and I'm better. I would like to hear that testimony eventually.
Absolutely.
And that would be something that would kind of have me beaming. Beaming like the sunshine. That someone listened to us and they got some help.
Yeah, I mean, it could be something where I start talking to people. People advise me to go talk to somebody, and went in that direction. I mean, those type of stories you want to hear, because it's a cumulative effect. It's a cumulative effect where people are like, oh yeah, I can try that, and it started by just talking to somebody, making the awareness out there. And then what's the next step? Okay, I did it. I got my diagnosis. I went this whole cycle of acceptance, right? And then I'm at a different place. So I would love to get people along the way. Once you got a diagnosis, what happened then? So just like that video today, she got many different diagnoses, right? And then there was a story behind that.
I mean, it felt like, looking at that video, it's like it sounded just like many, many stories I heard over the years. And I'm like, wow, I remember that. And could put other faces with their faces, whether it's a parent or sister, brother, or two sisters, and I can actually put faces that I come across with that family. And I said, wow, I've seen that, I heard that, and so, but we just got to pay attention, I want to put on this little audio from a friend of mine, Grimothy. He did these couple of audios for me, and I really like them, so I just want to put them out.
Before you do that, Charlie, can you pull up the last comment by Michael, please?
Sure.
Thank you for that. And I hate to keep bringing this up. This has happened so often. It's happened so often before, and there's been, the video was a ending good story. There are people who go through this and the ending is not a good story. And a lot of people don't even see the path up to them doing the most ultimate thing to harm themselves, which is committing suicide.
Yes.
Right? So I I think about that and it's pretty devastating.
Sure is. The it's especially when your ears are open, for a loved one or
Yep.
for anyone. Period. Your ears are open to listen. Want to know what's going on. I want to help. And then when you hear that you wasn't able to listen to them, and
Right.
their fate was tragic. It's pretty sad. It says, "Hey, man, I wish I was there."
Right.
But all we can do is just keep being there for each other. Let's see. The comment here. It's so sad when the other ending ends. Yes, true.
Yep. So true.
All right. Let's see.
It's the Really Charlie Podcast, a weekly show with the one person to make you say, "Really, Charlie?" on the Really Charlie Podcast. Tune in. It's the Really Charlie Podcast, making memories last. Your time, my time, we all shine on the Really Charlie Podcast.
That's from Grimacy, local artist, and I just the message is that we all shine. We're all trying to shine. We're all trying to do the best we can here.
We all are.
And on this podcast and in our communities, and that's what I want to bring up in this bi-weekly show with you, Marvin. We're just trying to get things out there, and but to me, this is very personable and dear to my heart. When someone is going through mental illness and depression, and I try to help. That's how I served the city of New Bedford for 30 years. I was trying to help the next person. That's what I wanted to do, and it doesn't stop. It doesn't stop. I'm going to continue to do this throughout my life. And when there's an opportunity or a situation where I need help, I got to reach out.
Yep.
I can't. I got to stop resolving or relying on that I can do it. I can do it all. Got to kind of seek out some people, and there's many people around me. So from my house to my community, it can help me. So I just want to make sure that I do that personally myself.
That's great, Charlie.
Yeah. I have so many new guests coming up. It's just, people are trying to come on the Really Charlie Podcast, and I really, really appreciate everyone out there that's trying to come on, and from musicians to community activists to community people, and even children. I'm trying to get them all on here so we can highlight them, give them their flowers while they're standing, including yourself. We have to do another podcast between you and I, and some of the work that you're doing in that community in Los Angeles,
Yeah.
So including your company, I would love to do that. Whether we're, I would like to do something where we're maybe doing a makeover where a bunch of people using your Double Down Cosmetics, and basically, let you and Kristen show your merchandise,
Well, I tell you what, she's done she's done a yeoman's job with that. I mean, she's the backbone of that Double Down Cosmetics. The backbone of what I do, it's always her. So that's why I love her so much.
Yes. She's an ace, first round draft pick.
First found traffic for sure.
No trade clause.
Yeah, no trade clause.
The,
So he's
go
got to
ahead,
do
Coach.
Oh, I was looking at what Michael said.
Yeah, he says now I have to do a damn sports podcast. Let me put it up here so everyone will see it.
Yeah,
Oh,
you know, Michael. I always say the one thing that therapists like to talk about a lot is coping skills. In the coaching world, we call it pivoting of thoughts, right? So really, sometimes where you're at is really a temporary state. Not unless you carry on that energy from time to time to time and time again, right? So to be able to pivot, and it could be there's a lot of things, and we could talk about that on another call too. Kind of like pivoting, right? Pivoting is everything, right? It could be like I see something that really bothers you, and they really came up with this stuff a long time ago, kind of pivoting because they saw people who were affected so much by PTSD, and they were like, okay, how can we get people out of this because they stayed in that funk? Because sometimes we see something and we see it on a physical level, but it spins in our subconscious for so long. And when we start to pivot our thoughts and really getting other types of thoughts, that stops some of that or spins it in another direction. So, yeah, I would always say to really kind of get out of this, you start writing down, just reading or looking at something different that brings you some level of a different feeling. And it doesn't have to be anything complicated, right? What gives you a different feeling? It could be watching children play, dogs play, and being very present with that. And when you're present with wherever you're at with a different type of feeling, that becomes your predominant thoughts and it becomes your predominant feelings. So that's one way to kind of pivot. But there's many different ways out there. But sometimes if we were able to focus on something that's a little bit lighter for a good period of time, that's where our focus goes to.
exactly. Pivoting. I like that. In fact, that can be a whole podcast in itself.
That could be a whole podcast, pivoting.
So we're gonna definitely have to put that on maybe the second show from now. And do that.
Okay.
But hey man, I love this show. We did a great job, I believe, and and the comments were unbelievable. And
great comments.
we have the usual supporters on the side, doing their thing. I really, really appreciate that.
Yeah, we appreciate you all. Love you all to death, man.
Yeah. Please share this podcast. It's on YouTube, Spotify, Anchor, and Facebook. Share it. Get this message out. It may lead to a comment after the podcast. Where we can talk to someone or someone could be looking for some help, and so please share it, and it may lead to other comments later on, where we can address it.
Yep.
Let's see. Man, Michael says, I love this simplicity of the advice. Of course, my man. And we love your advice, man. You keep on doing the comments, and because you're listening and learning, but you're also teaching, Michael. So keep it up, everyone. Michael Consatio says, thank you guys, and thank you also, and you're welcome.
Love you all.
All right. Yes, we do love you. All right, Coach, you let me know when's the next date, and we'll make sure we advertise it, get it going.
Okay, we will.
What I'll do is I'll download this, but feel free if you want to call me in the next 20 minutes, please do that, and we'll go from there.
All right. Thanks, family.
You're the best, man. Give the missus a hug for me. So
I will.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Take care, brother.
All right.
All right. Peace. All right, everyone. My man, my coach, Marvin Speller, CoachM100. Definitely doing his thing. Always. we will be back on the podcast and, making into mental illness your priority or our priority. So we're going to set it up and we try to do it every 2 weeks. So feel free to continue to, listen. If you have any suggestions, you have any points that you want me to bring up during the next podcast or any of the podcasts, please just send me a message through Messenger and on Facebook, or leave a comment in YouTube, and actually in Anchor and Spotify, you can leave an audio. You can audio message to me, and I can definitely, if it's something that you want to talk about, don't have to always have your face on the screen. You can have an audio, and we can play that audio during one of the podcasts, and explaining talking about your situation without you bringing a video present. So, but just continue to support the Really Charlie podcast here on Facebook, Anchor, Spotify, YouTube, and please like and subscribe to Really Charlie channel on YouTube. All right, everyone. As I always do, I end with an upbeat from Lionel Peter Walker and this beautiful intro that he had done for me, and I really, really like it, and we're going to continue to do some other ones. All right. God bless. Stay blessed. And if you have time tomorrow, we will be on the Rush Show with Russell Ramos. And he's got a nice guest coming on. I'm going to co-host with him. And don't forget, every Tuesday, we are on WNB One Radio. Russell Ramos and I serving you R&B music on the rocks. Chilled music with chilled hosts, where you get to listen to the music you love the most on WNB One Radio. Take care, y'all. Have a great night. Love you. Go Celtics.
It's the Really Charlie Podcast. Yeah, it's the Really Charlie Podcast. Yo, it's the Really Charlie Podcast. Bumping through your broadcast. Grab a chair, fill your glass. Yeah, it's the Really Charlie Podcast. Yo, it's the Really Charlie Podcast. Yeah, it's the Really Charlie Podcast. Bumping through your broadcast. Grab a chair, fill your glass.